It was the extra pair of underwear that first made me think that something in our relationship had veered off the highway and was rolling in the soft mud, undermining our trust in each other. It wasn't the sexy panties in my wife's panties, but the black panties in mine. I may not be the most observant of husbands or the most knowledgeable about the latest fashion trends, but I always buy the same brand and style of panties. Black color, absolutely no brand name. If there is a brand name, I ignore it. I'm not a billboard, and I have no one to impress on a first date. My wife and kids don't buy me plain socks and sweatpants for Christmas, birthdays, or Father's Day either. So when I find a pair of black briefs that say Calvin Klein on the elastic band, it makes me think. I thought about it for a few days, and I tossed the offending item in the trash. The panties were the same size as mine, so that ruled them out as belonging to my 12-year-old sons. We haven't had any recent overnight visitors, and we don't do laundry, so they couldn't have accidentally fallen into our laundry. This has become a mystery to me. I should take a few minutes to introduce myself. I'm Peter Jones from Albury, New South Wales, Australia. I am married to Marguerite Jones, née Smith. We have 2 children, 12-year-old Jimmy and 10-year-old Nancy. No relationship problems that I am aware of, at least so far. I work at Albury Airport as a maintenance manager for the airplanes that are based here. Our company services both commercial and private planes. Albury, New South Wales has a sister city across the Murray River known as Wodonga. The Murray is the border between New South Wales and Victoria, so Wodonga is in Victoria. We are sometimes approached in the twin towns of Albury-Wodonga. Marguerite works at the local Kmart department store several days a week. She doesn't have to work, but she doesn't like to stay at home. Marguerite, I'm so tired of this manager trying to hit on me that I wish I had enough confidence to go to HR and file a harassment complaint against him, but one of the female HR employees is a close friend of his, and I'm worried about the repercussions. It's a relatively small town, and there aren't many jobs here for someone with my lack of skills. I've been a stay-at-home mom and housewife for most of my life. If I couldn't get out of the house and meet up with the few girlfriends I have at work, I would be deathly bored. The kids are at school all day, and I have almost nothing to do at home. The only distraction was Roy's unexpected arrival. One day I was sitting in the botanical gardens eating lunch alone when he came up behind me and sat next to me. He reminded me a little of my Peter, except he had a confidence that my husband never showed. I mean, I love Peter, and he's a great provider, an exceptional husband and father. But Roy, well, Roy just radiated confidence and charm. He also used aftershave, which my husband would never use. He just sat down with me that day and told me that I was so sexy and that he wanted to make love to me all day long. How long had it been since Peter had told me that? Roy touched my leg, moving up to my thigh before whispering in my ear that we would meet again soon. I instantly finished from that and felt my panties getting wet. I needed to get some new ones at work before I could focus on the day shift. I hadn't even finished my sandwich. Peter! Anyway, 3 days after my unfortunate find, I decided to do a little rummaging and discovered that one of our travel suitcases wasn't empty. It contained several sets of clothes I wasn't familiar with, including a few more Calvin Klein briefs. WTF? None of these items were my style either. They seemed like screaming nightclub clothes and not at all the conservative clothes I wear. I was at a loss as to what was going on. I couldn't afford a private investigator, and I'm not tech-savvy enough to investigate on my own. I can't even ask my friends to help me, or else what would they think? I bet they'd think I'm some kind of weakling or asshole for not being able to satisfy my own wife. Marguerite is always home at night, and she doesn't work nights, so when will she have time to have an affair? This is going to kill me. Roy. Marguerite is so sweet, I bet her husband doesn't fulfill her emotional or sexual needs. I need to fix that. I look forward to watching her. Marguerite. Friday. It had been 3 days since I had last seen Roy. I wondered if I had envisioned this whole situation in its entirety. Was it some kind of waking dream, or perhaps the overactive imagination of a bored housewife? I was sitting in the same spot when I smelled the scent of aftershave. I think it was Hugo Boss. I was afraid to turn around and felt a gentle caress on my cheek. That deep, commanding voice rendered me speechless and filled me with desire for him. I hoped he would order me to follow him. Instead, he said, "Meet me tonight at the Stagecoach Motel, room 5, and put this on." He handed me a brown bag and was gone before I could turn around. What am I going to tell my husband? You're a smart lady. You'll figure out what to say. Later that day, Peter called me to tell me that he would have to stay late at work because one of the planes needed urgent repairs. I wondered why a manager was needed for this, but decided not to argue about it. I started to tell him about the late bachelorette party invitation, but he said goodbye and hung up. I hired a neighborhood girl to babysit. I was nervous about driving to the motel, so I made sure to park my car so it wouldn't be visible from the street. I didn't have to knock when he opened the door, and I slipped inside. He took my coat and hung it on the back of the door. A chilled bottle of champagne was waiting for us. I don't usually drink much, so this was a special treat, and I wondered if the rest of the night was as special as the beginning. I sipped the fizzy drink as Roy kissed the back of my neck and began to unzip my dress. He exposed my underwear, and I felt so desirable, so wanted. Roy. My little angel was like the dream I'd been having for the past month, ever since I'd seen her at Kmart. I had watched her from afar before I got up the courage to approach her. Now she was standing in front of me, nearly naked, and I felt my blood pressure rise. I kissed her neck again and turned her to face me to kiss her lips. She tasted like honey steeped in red wine, and her soft lips were like marshmallows, and I was over the moon. Marguerite began to unbutton my shirt and ran her hands through the hair on my chest. I trembled with my whole body. Marguerite, Roy was so masculine and commanding that I felt completely safe, even though I had never done anything like this before. Why was I doing it now? I wasn't embarrassed, and it excited me more than I expected. I called out my lover's name in a burst of passion. Roy! She called me Peter. Why did she call me Peter? I stopped my attack on her intimate zone. What's my name? Her response followed immediately. Roy, Roy, take me, Roy, take me, Roy. I agreed. I barely agreed. I finished, and then we collapsed on the bed together. Then we repeated our lovemaking again. Roy. I watched her go home. I would miss her, but I knew we would meet again. Peter. All the texts left before I could even leave the airport. The paperwork was a nightmare. I had to justify all the overtime. And when I got home, Marguerite was already asleep, a smile on her face. It made me smile as I lay down next to her and pulled her close to me. The next morning, I wanted to make love, but my loving wife resisted my advances. I must say that this increased my suspicions, and I decided to intensify my investigation into her behavior. I began by looking into her finances. There were no unusual purchases or withdrawals. I waited until she put her phone on charge to see if there were any unusual messages or calls. I didn't have the technical skills to install any software to track her. One of the few skills I did have was using an internet search, so I Googled how to track a cheating wife. One of the results was the 8 best GPS apps for tracking your spouse. As before, I wouldn't know how to install the app without her finding out or suspecting something amiss. That's when I remembered that Google Maps tracks history. Now, I had to wait to access her phone again, which was difficult since I had no reason to get to it, Marguerite. I felt bad about denying Peter my love this morning. I was still horny and sore after last night. I was simultaneously wondering when I would see Roy again and devote myself to my family again. The weekend went as normally as it could possibly go, and since my parents wanted to see our kids, I sent the kids to visit them, and I went home to spend some intimate time with my husband. Peter was attentive but distracted. Peter? Honestly, it felt like pathetic sex. Roy. I can't wait to see Marguerite again. I intend to meet her again during her lunch break. Monday. I must wait until Monday. Peter. Monday I was called into the office of my boss, Jim. Peter, you seem distracted lately. Is everything okay? I realized that my life was in turmoil. I couldn't stop a tear from rolling from my right eye. Trembling, I answered, I think my wife is having an affair. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I don't know what I can say to that. If you need a break, pawn me, please keep me posted. Thanks, boss. I appreciate it. Oh, and Peter, we're here for you, buddy. I walked out a broken man. The need to admit it broke me. It somehow made everything more real. I wasn't ready for this. Jim, I hope Peter is going to be okay. I'm not sure if all of his absences are due to family issues, but obviously this was not the best time to discuss the matter. Marguerite. The smell of Roy's Hugo Boss reached me. His smooth voice said, "Wednesday lunchtime at the same place." Another gift. He disappeared again. Anxiety and excitement bubbled up inside him. Because of lunchtime, I wouldn't need babysitters or excuses to work. Roy. Soon I would see my little flower. Peter. Have I lost my wife, my family? I woke up in my car in tears. I don't remember walking to my car. When I calmed down, I went back to my office and finished my report. I just did all the necessary steps. Marguerite. I left work on Wednesday to meet my lover for what I envisioned as the best sex ever. I deserve it. Roy made me feel so good, so desirable, so wanted. Roy? She's so responsive, so passionate. She makes me feel alive. Peter. I was done. I watched my wife, my lover, leave me. She was leaving me. It was an emotional divorce, a prequel to being a single dad. I didn't want to be a single dad. I screamed at Marguerite. I threw the suitcase at her and asked who was he? Why was she doing this to me? A neighbor went inside to see what was going on, and the police and ambulance soon followed. I knew my life was over. I just fainted and cried. The police and ambulance took me to the hospital. I didn't care. I didn't give a damn. The next day, the doctor wanted to talk about it. Do I know what happened? Let's talk about the timeline. I explained how I first discovered the underwear in the suitcase. The doctor listened and took notes. He explained that I would be in the hospital for the next 72 hours under the care of a psychiatrist. Marguerite, why does the doctor want to talk to me? Is my husband going to be okay? Why was he acting like that? The doctor explained that he believed Peter had a condition known as dissociative identity disorder, or split personality. Peter and Roy are two facets of the same person. No, I replied. He used to role play. I liked it. He liked it. I'm sorry, Marguerite. He seemed supportive. I needed to think about it. The doctor spent about 30 minutes discussing how it would affect us. He also explained that Peter would need to see a psychiatrist to get a proper diagnosis. It will take some time, but there is no reason why you can't have a normal relationship and family. Roy. So, doctor, what does this mean for me? Are you going to erase my identity? So, Roy, is that correct? I'm talking to Roy now? I pointed out that I was. I can't answer that question. You and Peter will need to discuss this with your psychiatrist. Anyway, I don't think you're a danger to your family or the community. I hated being locked up. I hadn't done anything wrong. I miss seeing Marguerite. Jim, I got a call from Peter's wife, Marguerite. She said Peter's in the hospital. He might be out for a while. I told her we would support him. She didn't go into detail about the issue, but I realized it was a mental health issue. Peter had some issues at work, but I don't think he realized it. Either way, I'm glad he has the opportunity to get better. We will do our best to provide him with a job when he returns, but in the meantime, I need to keep the business running. Customers and employees depend on us. Peter, I found some strange underwear in my house. It led me down a path I wasn't ready for. It led me to believe my wife was cheating. I assume she was, but she didn't know the whole truth. She thought I was Peter playing the role of Roy. The good news is that now that we know the truth, we can work with it. I'm looking forward to the future.